Many patients with shoulder pain come to the clinic convinced that they need to work on their strength. They've tried exercises, lifted weights, and even improved some movements, but the pain is still there. And here's where the mistake lies. In many cases, the problem isn't strength, but rather scapular control. The scapula is the foundation on which the shoulder moves, and if that foundation isn't stable or coordinated, any action such as pushing, pulling, or raising the arm is performed on an inefficient structure. The result: compensations, cervical overload, discomfort, and functional limitations. That's why, before strengthening, you should answer a key question. Is the scapula functioning properly? Today, I'm going to show you how to assess scapular control in 15 minutes and how to use electromyography to detect exactly which muscle is failing. Both clinical practice and the evidence agree on one thing. Alterations in scapular movement or scapular dyskinesias are closely related to shoulder pain. In many patients, we see three clear patterns: inhibition of the serratus anterior, deficit of the lower trapezius, and overactivation of the upper trapezius as compensation. The problem is that these patterns are not always visible to the naked eye. The patient may be able to complete the movement, but with a compensatory strategy. And your job is not just to observe the movement, but to understand which muscle is leading the action and which one's failing. Let's move on to a practical protocol. First test, high retraction. Here we analyze the patient's ability to control scapular retraction, especially the role of the lower trapezius. In an efficient pattern, the lower trapezius should activate more than the serratus anterior. If the opposite occurs, the patient may be able to pull but does not stabilize correctly. In this case, the error is not a lack of strength. The solution is not to add load, but to re-educate the pattern and facilitate activation of the lower trapezius. Second test, wall or floor press-ups. Here we assess scapular control during a pushing movement where the serratus anterior should take the lead. A correct synergy is for the serratus to activate more than the lower trapezius. If it happens the other way around, the patient loses dynamic stability, especially in overhead tasks. Here the objective is clear: to re-educate scapular protraction and prioritize control over load. Third test, shoulder flexion. During efficient elevation, the scapula should accompany the movement, respecting the scapulohumeral rhythm. When this fails, a typical pattern appears: overactivation of the upper trapezius, while the serratus anterior and lower trapezius are less involved than necessary. The result is usually an alteration of the rhythm, cervical overload, and pain during elevation. And here the usual mistake returns: increasing the load without first correcting the pattern. First control, then strength. When scapular control fails, the shoulder loses its base of stability. This triggers a cascade of compensations. The neck becomes more involved, cervical tension appears, efficiency in pushing and pulling is lost, and the ability to generate force decreases. Over time, this leads to recurrent pain, especially during repetitive movements or overhead activities. On the other hand, when scapular control is adequate, the shoulder works more efficiently and the risk of injury decreases. This is where EMG comes in. One of the biggest problems in assessing the shoulder is that many decisions are made solely by observation or by the patient's own perception. Electromyography gives you objective information about which muscle is activated, when it happens, and with what intensity. You can check whether the serratus anterior leads the protraction, if the lower trapezius stabilizes during retraction, or if the upper trapezius is compensating during elevation. What's more, you can measure how this pattern changes after an intervention. This allows you to make much more precise decisions, to know when to progress, when to correct, and when an exercise is achieving its goal. Remember this: many shoulder problems are not due to a lack of strength, but rather a lack of scapular control. If you don't assess scapular protraction and retraction, you might reinforce compensations without realizing it. Because with the shoulder, it's not just about moving, but about moving with the right muscle at the right time. If you want to learn how to integrate EMG into your practice and speed up your patient's results, request more information.